Hello, it's Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the SonicScoop podcast. If you're here for the live stream premiere, let me know you can see me and hear me in the chat box. I've had a long day because I just did a 4,000 word post on all the best modeling mics out there. Whole big blog post that contextualizes all the options. I've actually got two of them in front of you right now. On screen, you'll see this Universal Audio Sphere LX. This is about $1,000 modeling microphone. And over to my other side, you'll see a Antelope audio microphone. That one is called the Edge Duo. And in fact, right now I'm speaking into the wrong mic. Here is the Sphere FX. There we go. I'm speaking directly into the Sphere FX now. Let me get both mics going. And now over here is the Edge Duo. And they should sound pretty similar to one another because I have them both on the same setting. They're both on the vintage U67 setting. Here again on the Antelope Audio and here again on the Sphere. Let me mute that Antelope Audio for a second. We'll continue on with the Sphere for right now. And I'm going to let you hear not just these, but a whole bunch of others. I have some USB modeling mics like this Axino here. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. Over here is the Edge Duo, Universal Audio Sphere, Antelope Audio Axino. I've got more. And I've also got some organization, so we'll get through them. I've got this here, Universal Audio Standard SD1. I've got this Standard SE1 from Universal Audio, the SD1 and the SC1. We'll talk about what the differences are. I've got this here, Edge Note, another modeling microphone, a small diaphragm condenser modeling microphone from Antelope. And we're going to talk about all the options out there. There are really three major brands that are making dedicated modeling mics. They are Universal Audio, Antelope Audio, and Slate. And we're going to compare those three brands against one another and also the models in each of those brands. So I'll give you a sense of the whole lay of the land, all of the ideas around modeling mics, who's making what brands are good for what. We'll get to hear some back-to-back comparisons. And if you want, there's also a companion article I did on this. Let me get you over here into my screen share mode here. And over on SonicScoop, if you go to SonicScoop.com, we just came out with this article today. I wrote it literally this morning. So if my intro is not my finest, crispest intro ever, it's because I just wrote this post over 4,000 words, all on the best modeling microphones and how they compare. We'll talk a little bit about, there are some software options there as well. Antares has a mic modeler plugin that came out 24 years ago that kind of kicked off this concept. IK Multimedia has a mic modeling suite, but we're really going to be focusing in on dedicated mic modeling microphones, talking about the concept, whether you should get one, whether they sound any good, whether you can use them on real records, and we'll compare the feature sets to one another. And I'll bring open some of the software here, and we can flip through mic models in real time on this Universal Audio, on this Antelope, and some of the others that I have here. All right, with all of that out of the way, I'm just about to get into it. The only quick thing I got to do before we hear some back-to-back comparisons and I contextualize everything for you is the quickest of a shout-outs to our sponsors. The most important sponsor, as always, is you. How do you sponsor this podcast? With your likes and with your love. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. If you're on an audio-only version like Apple Podcasts, consider giving us a 5-star rating and review. It really does help. Also, another great way to support this channel, no additional cost to you, is click one of our affiliate links. If you go to the article or if you go into the description or the comments down below, I'll have links to the article and to the individual microphones and microphone series. Buy one of them on your real retailer of choice and we'll get a small commission for that at no additional charge for you. And that helps make it so that I have an incentive to spend 8 hours this morning trying out all these microphones, writing the 4,000 word post. Actually, the 8 hours this morning was just to write the 4,000 word post. I spent another 8 hours trying out all the microphones for you so I'd actually be able to speak intelligently about them. And I have more than a half dozen of these microphones here right now in front of me, but where I couldn't try out a specific model, I'm still going to be able to compare that model for you because often these are just variations on the same themes. And in some cases where that's not the case, I went out and I found the best demonstration videos I could find so I could hear them back to back against the other models as well, so I can give you my full impressions. Last quick shout out before we get into the meat of the audio comparisons and the tasting notes on all of these are shout outs to Sound Toys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. Try out anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. Truly wonderful stuff. Also, check out Baby Audio. If you go to babyaud.io/SonicScoop, you can get, I think it's 15% off any of their stuff, even if there's a sale price. So check them out over at babyaud.io/SonicScoop. Again, some of the most creative, interesting, and fun to use effects out there. Psyched to have those guys as a sponsor on the channel as well. Other than that, this is not sponsored by anyone except for you, so no mic modeling companies are sponsoring this, and I'm just going to give you my unadulterated views on these. All right, back into our screen share mode. The way that I'm sharing these with you right now is I have Pro Tools open, and right now we're going through the Universal Audio console where I have instantiated their Sphere plugin. And this is what their Sphere plugin looks like. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not on a U67 on this one. I'm on a U47. So let's switch that over. Here, U67, new old stock. Let's compare that now. You should be able to hear this change in real time to something a little bit more modern. Here's a modern U87. So same family of microphones. This would be a U87 made basically present day compared to its tube predecessor made in the 60s, which should be a lot darker. A U67. Do you hear a difference there? If you want to hear an even more remarkable difference, we can go to something maybe even more old school. Let's see if we can find a ribbon mic in here. There's a ribbon mic. This is the R121 ribbon. This is a more modern ribbon, but still a kind of darker sounding microphone. Let's go back through. Let's get something really bright. Sony C800G. And here we go. Here's the C800G. This is a microphone that costs more than $10,000. I think back when I first encountered this microphone, it was like an $18,000 microphone in the early 2000s. And now, I don't know, is it a $20,000 or $30,000 microphone? They're constantly sold out and back ordered. You tell me what the current going price is on a C800G. This microphone, though, closely approximates a C800G, and it costs $1,000. This is the Universal Audio Sphere LX. It also will closely approximate, here, vintage U47. One of these in great shape is probably going to be $10,000 and up, really depending on condition. So there's a whole smorgasbord of incredibly expensive microphones, and each one of them, when I've demoed these, really does sound like how I remember these microphones sounding when using them in the studio. Practically every single microphone in this kit I've been in the studio with. I've had that good fortune to try pretty much all of these in real life. And when I was playing around with this Sphere software, I got to tell you, I was amazed at just how close they were to my memory of each of these microphones. The differences are subtle when they should be subtle and significant when they should be significant. But some of the things that just knocked my socks off is how well it approximates not just the frequency response, but when you get behind the microphone and you speak into it, and you've got to try this for yourself, how much it actually changes the polar patterns so that they react how these microphones really did in real life. And that's one of the great things about this particular microphone. We'll talk about all of the microphones in just a second, but this particular microphone, the Sphere LX, there's a few microphones that do this. The Sphere LX from UA, the DLX from UA, the Antelope Audio Duo, their Go, and any of these mics that have at least two outputs coming out of them have a separate output for each capsule. And that allows the microphone to more accurately model the exact differences in off-axis response that the original microphones had. And that was one of the things that blew me away, is turning the microphone around backwards and just hearing that change. Like, they just felt like completely different microphones, the off-axis response. And that's part of what makes great microphones sound great. It's not just the frequency response of what's hitting the capsule. It is the off-axis frequency response. The coloration on a great mic of other things bleeding into it, of the room bleeding into it, has a real impact. And these more modern modeling mics that do this, starting in about 2016 with the Townsend Labs, I think it was called the Sphere then. I forget the exact model number, LD22 or something like that. The original Townsend Labs Sphere was the first I knew of to do that, and to take a snapshot of each of the two capsules in the microphone and allow us to do this thing where we're mimicking the actual off-axis response of the microphone as well as the on-axis response. And that's what's really helped make modeling microphones in the present day sound as accurate as they do. They're surprisingly accurate. I'll also tell you that even some of the older tech, like the Slate modeling microphone that has a single output that came out around in 2014, even older tech like that still does a fantastic job. And there have been major hit records recorded on the older tech. So if your question to me is, Justin, if I get one of these microphones, can I use it to make a high quality hit record? And the answer is, it ain't going to stop you. There have been records that have been streamed hundreds of millions of times, possibly billions of times, on basically each of the microphone families we're going to look at today. So long story short is, if you get any one of the decent microphones from any one of these brands, they are not going to stop you from making a great record and a great sounding record. So modeling mics, hooray, go get one. Check out one of the affiliate links, all that. But there's also some people that these modeling mics are not for. And I'm going to talk about some of the drawbacks of modeling mics as we go along as well. While we're looking at this universal audio, just because it's fun to do, some of the things that are in here are just so cool. And I'm just going to start off by talking about universal audio because out of the three brands, for me, I gave them the distinction of having them be the winner for the category of best all around in our roundup. And the reason for that is, man, the software to hardware integration here is amazing, and the price to value is amazing. There are reasons you might want to buy an Antelope modeling mic instead, or the Slate modeling mics instead, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the reason that I gave Universal Audio best all around is in large part just because of how great the software and hardware integration is. This goes doubly so if you're already a Universal Audio user. If you have a UAD Apollo piece of hardware, the integration is even better. You can use their hardware acceleration to get this kind of processing, and not just microphone processing, but also preamps and compressors and EQs and all that stuff in real time with basically no latency, recording, committing to effects on the way in. And the amount of features they have here in the Sphere plugin is incredible. So here I can change polar patterns, including to polar patterns that wouldn't have existed in the original U47 in this case. So here's cardioid, and here's an omni pattern. I can also switch to bidirectional, and you hear when I'm in bidirectional, I can go around to the side, and I'm going to like practically null out in the side. There's a really deep null in bidirectional patterns. So it's marked in green what would have been the original patterns on the mic, and the ones that aren't highlighted wouldn't have been originally on the mic, but you can get to them anyway. The filter, these are not in green because there were no filters on the original U47. But where there were special filters on the original mics, they'll mimic that exact filter behavior. And when there isn't, they'll give you 60 hertz, 100 hertz, and 200 hertz. Now you hear some low end disappearing, right? The axis is really cool. I can make this mic sound like I'm behind it without losing level by switching the axis. So if I go 180 degrees off axis, this is now what the microphone sounds like from behind, but without reducing level. Isn't that interesting? And then I can go back. We could also change the proximity effect, making myself sound closer to or further away from the microphone. And that is really changing the low frequency buildup, the amount of proximity effect that we get off the microphone if we're up close to it. Another thing that they do really well that some of the others don't is this dual view, where we can actually put two microphones together. So I could get like the body of a U87 plus, I don't know, why don't we go over here to the Sony C800G and get that in there too for its high end. So I can go back and forth between them, going from the U47 to the 800. So here's the Sony 800, and here's the Neumann U47. Pretty different sound, right? Neumann U47, Sony 800. Pretty remarkable. But you can also mix these two mics together. So I can go here into mix mode, take it out of solo, and now we're hearing a combination of these two microphones. I think that's just wild. And they have so many presets in here. And the presets are often using more than one microphone, although not always. Here's classic female vocal made by producer Billy Bush. Here's a male vocal preset made by Cassidy Turbin. And these presets Some of them will have additional stuff going on as well. Some of them are just a single mic. Let's go through a few more of these. Vocal Gentleman. Here is a U67. Joe Ciccarelli, he has some vocals in here. This one's called Breathy Background Vocals that he has set up here. So, yeah, there's just all these kinds of great presets by kind of major producers and engineers. There's a whole bunch of voiceovers here. Trailer voiceover preset. Tight background vocal preset. This looks like an AKG 414 here. So I've got to say, as far as software integration goes, this is probably my number one pick. I'm going to go back into main mode here. In the Sphere software from Universal Audio, I just think they have the most fully featured one. And to me, the mic models here are some of the best. Each brand has its own subtle flavor and difference in how their mic models tend to sound on average. Now, obviously, each one of these brands is modeling different specific microphones. So when Universal Audio does a U47 and when Antelope Audio does a U47, they're maybe not modeling the same exact microphone. Same thing when Slate does a U47. But with that said, even allowing for there being different microphones and differences between different microphones, I feel like each brand, when they're going to err, they err in a certain direction. And for me, I think Universal Audio really does err towards trying to get the authentic voice of the original microphone as closely as possible, because their models just tend to sound slightly in the thicker and fuller and more authentically old school analog kind of direction that I'm used to when they should. At the opposite end of the spectrum was Slate, where when I compared their models directly to all of these others, they erred slightly towards kind of brighter, more modern, a little bit more sheen, people might use the word, a little bit more kind of brightness and air and modernity. But we're talking about very subtle differences, with Universal Audio erring towards thicker and fuller, Slate erring towards a little bit brighter and more modern with a little more sheen, and then Antelope Audio being somewhere in between. For my personal sonic preferences, I lean a little bit towards the Universal Audio out of the three brands, but I've also done all of my testing with these just in isolation on my own voice, on a single instrument. And in that context, my ear tends to want fuller, thicker sounds. But in the context of a full mix, what's one of the most common things we do? We de-thicken and de-fullify sounds, right? So there's a decent chance that the Slate could be a really popular choice for a lot of people because, where they're different, it often errs towards maybe just a hair brighter and a hair more modern, and that might need even less EQ in the mix, with Antelope being, again, somewhere in between. So those are some things to think about. But the differences sometimes are basically non-existent, and the differences when they're there, that's the overall general trend, I can say, between the different brands. All right, with that spiel given to you about the Universal Audio, let's continue talking about them a little bit more before we get into Antelope, which also makes some fantastic stuff. And there's some places where I think Antelope has Universal Audio beat, and we'll talk about exactly where that is. But let me just give you a little bit more context on Universal Audio. We'll go over to their website, and I'll show you all of the different modeling mics together. First off, the two major flagship mics for Universal Audio when it comes to modeling mics are the Sphere and the Sphere DLX and the Sphere LX. So the Sphere DLX or Deluxe and the Sphere LX or Light, I guess you could call them, they are really, really similar. The Sphere DLX has a pad switch that's not on the Sphere LX, and that's one of the two differences. The other difference is this Sphere DLX is a little bit bigger than the Sphere LX. You can't really see the difference from these pictures, but side by side, I would say the DLX might come up to about here, and the width might be about out to here. And they actually sound slightly different. Maybe they have slightly different specs, but the biggest difference is actually the size of the head basket. And you might not think that this matters when it comes to microphones, but it does. A significant portion of the sound of one microphone compared to another is not just the capsule and not just the electronics, but the acoustic head basket design is one of the most significant things in the sound of a microphone. And that's something people don't realize. So the LX and the DLX will sound a little bit different. How would I describe this? There's at least one direct comparison you can find of this on YouTube for yourself. There's a voiceover guy who did it, but I will give you my notes from having tried them myself and actually from watching his video too, that this Sphere LX sounds just a little bit tighter and drier. Perfect words for it. Tighter and drier than the DLX, which sounds a little bit more open and airy. The difference in price is $500, and for $500 more, you get a slightly larger microphone that comes with a few more models and has a larger head basket, which gives you a slightly more open and airy sound. Where this one, the LX, $500 less, $1,000 on the nose, gives you a slightly tighter, drier sound. And it just things sound a little bit more upfront and a little bit closer to you. Now, another caveat here I should give you is I am not using any sweetening on my voice. You are hearing just the unadulterated, pure examples of each of these. The only thing that's going on here is I do have a maximum limiter on each of these to bring up the level. And I occasionally might hit, if I talk really loud, I might occasionally hit that limiter. But I don't think I'm doing it very often. Check, yo, hey. Yeah, so if I get up there, maybe I'm limiting by like 2 or 3 dB just to get this to a healthy level. And that's all that's going on. So those are the major differences. The size of the head basket affecting the sound slightly. There's an additional switch on the DLX. Probably slightly better specs on the DLX, although I couldn't quote them to you off the top of my head. I'm not big on reading specs about noise floor and stuff like that because generally they're all good enough these days. And then the other difference being how many models it comes with. Now, below this, from Universal Audio, there's also, which I tried extensively, these standard mics. And these are cool as well. The standard SC one is their large condenser microphone that comes in at just around $400. So less than half the price of the Sphere LX. And this one is a cool microphone. It only has the one output and it has fewer models. And this standard plugin, it doesn't have all the same features. So if I open up another track, let's see if I can turn one on here. And if they let me put a microphone onto it, I'll give you a look at what the Hemisphere collection looks like. This is the Hemisphere collection. I'm not talking through it right now. We're not hearing this. I'm just bringing it up on screen because I don't want to plug and unplug all the different microphones. But if you want, towards the end of the stream, I can plug this one in too, and we can hear it back to back. So this is what the SE1 looks like. You'll see it doesn't have all the same features. It does have the axis feature. It has the proximity feature. It has the filter feature. And there's a cool little graphic with the proximity feature there. But it doesn't have those things like where you can combine multiple models. And it doesn't have the isosphere in there either. I don't think it has it does have the polarity reverse. And does it have polar patterns? No. I think everything in here is cardioid only. So we're spending less than half the money and we're getting a mic that is cardioid only, and it can't emulate the different polar patterns of the original mics that it models. You can't combine mics together and you don't have this kind of acoustic treatment function built into it. But you have a whole bunch of decent mic models in here. You've got your U67, your U47, you've got the TLM 103, you've got the AKG C12, you've got the Telefunken 251, you've got the AKG 414, you've got the 800G. You're not hearing these change because I'm not actually talking to this microphone right now. I'm just showing you the Hemisphere. But we can do a direct comparison between the Sphere and the Standard if you guys want to hear that in the chat. The next thing I want to hit you to is the idea that there's a dynamic mic from these guys, the SD1. And what this one does, the SD1, is it models a whole bunch of dynamic mics. So I can change my source in here to the Hemisphere plugin to the SD1. Again, we're not going to hear these changes because I'm not actually talking to this mic at this second, but it's got basically large diaphragm dynamics. It's got the Shure SM7, it's got the RE20, it's got some ribbon mics like that RCA, it's got this dynamic Beyerdynamic, the Sennheiser 441. I've literally used every single one of these microphones. And for each one of these in the standard series, there's a different suite of them. The SD5 is a really interesting one because this emulates a whole bunch of different kick drum mics. They've got the classic D12A, the D112, the Beta 52 from Shure, the Audeze D6, which has a lot of great click from metal. So those are our options here. You've got the SC1. This guy is about $400, and it does large diaphragm condensers. The SD1, this one is a bit cheaper. I think it's $350, and it does all of our large dynamics. You've got the SD5, which is for kick drums and emulates major kick drum mics. The SD7, which is like the kind of mid-sized dynamic, which emulates like a Sennheiser 421, that kind of thing. We'll look through those. Here's a old school Sennheiser 421, more modern Sennheiser 421, Sennheiser 409, a Sennheiser 441. This is a Beyerdynamic M160 ribbon microphone. That's the Led Zeppelin When the Levee Breaks ribbon microphone. It's not going to be able to do the polar pattern of that, which would be a hypercardioid, but it will. Actually, maybe the SD7 is hypercardioid. Maybe that's one of the differences. I got to double check that. Then there's the SD3, and this one does like the smaller dynamic microphones, right? Your Shure SM57, an old school 57, and the Sennheiser 409 and Audeze and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's the idea with this whole series. Hopefully I've been sharing my screen for that stuff. Yes, I have. Good. I'm a little flustered today because, like I said, 8-9 hours chained to the desk doing this massive post for you guys. So I hope I still left some of it in me for the live stream. So those are our mics. And if you go in here into the article, I've got the cheat sheets for you that break it down. You've got the standard SE1 and you got the prices on each of them. Large condenser. There's also this pair I didn't mention, the SP1. That's a pair of small diaphragm condensers, emulates small diaphragm condensers, etc. They basically came out with a model for every type of microphone. And that's the view of universal audio. And this really changes things because one of the big things that Antelope had over universal audio was that Antelope is that brand where they see what other brands are doing and they're like, we're going to give you a little more for a little less money. And for years, Antelope was taking market share from Universal Audio by saying, oh, you guys have that Sphere DLX at $1,499. Would be a shame if somebody came out with a mic for $1,000 that's just as good. And you know what? It's actually better because this Duo for just $1,049, it doesn't come with just a soft carrying case and a cable. It comes with its own double-sided pop filter, a beautiful shock mount, which you guys maybe can't really see in the shot so well, but a beautiful shock mount. And it comes with a deluxe hard carrying case, and it's less money than your Sphere DLX. Man, that's one of the reasons you might go for Antelope over Universal Audio. The sounds are just as good and we're giving you more for less money. However, Universal Audio threw a curveball literally within the past year, coming out with not just the Sphere LX, which is very recent. I think that maybe 2 years old, but even more recent than that is the Standard Series. And the Standard Series now takes Universal Audio's price point down to as low as $400. And there's some microphones like their SD3, the one that does SM57s and stuff like that, is $109. It's barely more than an SM57, and you get to model a whole bunch of mics with it. So now Universal Audio has possibly got Antelope shaking their boots because the thing that Antelope Audio could cream Universal Audio at was, we're going to give you a little bit more for a little bit less. And then Universal Audio said, let's come out and just lower the price bar even further. We're going to beat you down to a great $400 microphone. Now, with that said, this microphone is also fantastic. And there are some microphones from Antelope that work price-wise even better. And I'm going to tell you what some of my top picks from Antelope are, because there's at least 2 places where they have the better options than Universal Audio. So let's do a little switcheroo. Right now, I'm on the Sphere. Right? You can hear me scratching that guy. I am now going to, let's go to the same model. Let me go back over here to console. We'll go to a 67. This time we'll do the real comparison. So here's the U67 from Universal Audio. Universal Audio U67, nothing on it but a limiter. Now let me enable this Edge Duo, and I'm going to come over here, and this is the sound of the Edge Duo U67 model. So these guys should be really close. Let me put on my headphones along with you. So here again is the 67. This is the 67 from Antelope, and this is the 67 from Universal Audio. how are my levels? Maybe my level's a little hotter on the Universal Audio. And here is the Antelope again. Does this one need to come up a little bit? I am hearing a little bit of a delay on my side because of the way that I have to, whoops, let me change it down. Because the way I have to set it up for my streaming software, I can't take advantage of the nice zero latency monitoring that's in the Universal Audio stuff. So here we go. This is the Antelope, and this is the Universal Audio. Let me try to cheat this one down a little bit. Is this a little bit closer? Here's our Universal Audio U67, and here is our Antelope U67. Let me even make this one a little hotter still. Check, check. What do you think of that? Here's my level on this guy, and here's my level on this guy. Pretty comparable, right? And the sounds are pretty similar, going back and forth between them. Let's check out some of the other models available here. I'm going to switch off of the Sphere, and we'll just be hearing me into this Edge Duo. I'm going to scratch on it. Definitely this guy, right? Here's our U67. Let's go over to our Tokyo 800T, which is the Sony 800G model. So here's the 800G again. And now going over to the Berlin 67. So this is our U67 emulation from Antelope Audio. And now let's switch that over to something quite different, the AKG 800G model. All right. There's also dynamic mics in here, like the Shure SM7B. We've got ribbon microphones in here too. Let me see if I can find one of those. This Minnesota is not. That's going to be an RE20. Sacramento. This one should be a 121 Royer. Tell me if you can hear these differences, if they're coming for you loud and clear here. Polar pattern. Looks like it automatically switched to bidirectional, as it should for a 121. Let's check it out in 67. Yeah, it's changing out to a cardioid pattern. So this one's great as well. You can see that there's just a little bit less going on with the software. It's just the mic models, right? And just the pattern selection, and the fact that they're going to change polar patterns where appropriate. So they have a slightly different orientation here. It shows the cardioid on bottom instead of on top, so they have a different approach there. But a lot of the same stuff. Ooh, Berlin 103. You know what that's going to be, right? Here's another Neumann. Let's change to something very different. Oxford 403. This is going to be a Coles ribbon mic. Let's try it out. Here's a Coles ribbon mic in bidirectional. And if I get over to the side, you can tell this really is bidirectional, right? There's a deep null there in the side. So again, great sounding stuff. Once your ears acclimate to it and you know, if you know what these mics sound like these should instantly sound to you like it does to me. Like, oh yeah, that does sound like a Coles 4038. That's the experience I've had on all of these. It really is remarkable. So you can also, on both of these, whether Universal Audio or Antelope or Slate, you can usually hear the dry microphone. So here's Edge Duo, the natural dry sound of the microphone, no effect on it. And they're just good, clean sounding, pretty flat condenser mics. That's the thing. Will it also emulate a SM57? Yes, it will. Oh, that's a Berlin 57. No, that's not an SM57. That's another condenser from Neumann. Let's see what else we've got here. This be another 47? Ooh, this Berlin 47 up here is the FET version. This is a really thick, rich sounding microphone. So yeah, that's us going through the Edge Duo. But that's not the only Antelope Audio mic I have here. I also have their small diaphragm condenser, the Edge Note, and if desired, we could hear this as well. These microphones, I gotta say, if you're doing like YouTube videos, small diaphragm condensers are underrated. You could use one of these as your microphone, like from a distance. If you don't need to be right up on the mic and you're not going for voiceover feel, you're going for, you know, in a room but really direct feel, a small diaphragm condenser is a great video mic, as well as being a great instrument mic and a great room mic. And these are so much cheaper. This mic, I think, is like $120 for the Edge Note. And I think for a pair, it's about $250. And I believe the Universal Audio for a pair of their small diaphragm condensers are about $350. So Antelope has them beat a little bit on price here. So where Antelope doesn't have Universal Audio beat anymore is that this particular mic, the Edge Duo, when it came out at $1049, was cheaper than the DLX. by a few $100, almost $450. But then when Universal Audio came out with this guy, the Sphere, Antelope isn't winning on price anymore. However, there are some categories where Antelope is winning on price. And let's go over to their website and I can walk you through them. And let's start on the SonicScoop website because I got the little cheat sheet here. Let's get on down to Antelope Audio. Here it goes. My top pick for these. One of them is probably this, the Axino Synergy Core. This is a really cheap modeling mic that has a USB connector on it. And this one I do have connected right now. I'll hook it up for you in just a second and we can hear it together. But this microphone for just $400, and I actually found it reduced on sale right now for $239, way cheaper than any condenser from Universal Audio. Not only is it a microphone, but it has an interface built in. And you might say, I already have an interface. I have a nice interface. Well, okay, this is an additional interface that gives you an additional channel. Are you the kind of person who's recording in a room with bands and you have full bands coming through? Maybe you have 8 channels, maybe you have 16. And with those track counts, you know that you often want one more channel, right? What would you give for one more channel? Well, here it is, one extra channel. Plug it in. If you're using something like Pro Tools, it's just going to come right up in Pro Tools without spending any additional money on additional interface, additional A to D converters. You've got it, your additional channel. You just went from a 2-channel system to a 3-channel system, or from 8-channel system to a 9-channel system, or from 16 channels to 17 channels of input just by buying a microphone. And that's how I'm using this right now. In fact, I have 3 interfaces hooked up in Pro Tools right now. This one is going through my Universal Audio Claret interface. This one is going through my, I don't have it turned on right now, but it's going through my Apollo interface from Universal Audio. And this one is an interface. Let's go over to Pro Tools again and turn it back on. So I'm going to go over here and turn this guy on. Axino. All right. And now I'm talking through the Axino microphone. And it actually has its own input level on here. And I have the same ability to come over here, use the same plugin. The Axino isn't on a plugin because it's its own piece of hardware, its own interface. It has DSP built in. So this one hosts the mic models natively inside of the DSP, inside the microphone. So it doesn't use any of your system resources. I'm holding this microphone away from my mouth as I'm talking. But this one, it doesn't use up any of your system resources. It just uses the DSP in here. Plus, you can run effects on it. It's got a whole bunch of effects in here. Here, voiceover, I'll put this on. And it loads up an API EQ, and it loads up this LA2A compressor. Here, I'll talk a little closer into it. Hey, are we hitting the compressor? Yeah, there's a compressor. All right, cool. I can load up other presets. It comes with a bunch of these. Male clean vocals. This is a different microphone, the Berlin V563 with some API EQ, and again, a LA2A compressor on there. What else do we have here for presets? Harsh vocals. What does that sound like? I want my vocals more harsh. Oh, it's an RE20, some brightening on this API, and now it's turned into a FET compressor. And let's hit myself a little harder with this FET. Let me turn down the output. Check. Now I'm going to hit it harder. Hey. Let's gain stage this bad boy. Check. 1, 2. Now I'm really squashing myself with a FET compressor. Yeah, hey. Okay, so there we go. I've got some heavier compression on it going now. Check. 1, 2. Yeah. Okay. That's going into a FET compressor. I can tweak these EQs in real time. Or let's see if I can go back to, it's got a phone effect on here. Here's a 441 through a de-esser and preamp here. And I guess it's also doing some EQ stuff to make it sound phony. Snare preset, all this stuff. I can go in here also and kill these. There it is, the 1073. That's probably what's doing the EQ. There's the de-esser. Let me turn that off. And check. Yeah. So, there's the Axino. This guy, remarkably low price. It's the same models that you're going to find on the higher end microphone, except it only has a single output. So, let's go over here to our AKG 414. I'm going to actually turn up the level. I can do that right here. This microphone is an interface, so I can just turn it up. Yo, what's going on? How's that level for you guys? Now we're getting closer to the levels of the other mics, right? Let's go from this 414. What else we got in here? Oh, an M103. Check. Here's our Sony A800G again. And here is the Axino, the just natural dry sound of the microphone with nothing on it. So again, all the same kinds of stuff. Here's our U47. I'm going to switch out of this one and I'm going to go back over to the. So here's the Edge Duo. So let's compare that. Here's the Berlin 47 FET, and I'll compare it directly to the Axino. Let's do a U87. So here's a U87 on the higher end microphone that costs $1,050. And now I'm going to go over to the Axino. Let's load up the same thing. What I have, a U87. Can I find the U87 in here? There's the U87 in the Axino. Let me switch to Axino. Here's Axino, U87. So this is the U87. Let's put them close together. U87 Axino. Let me mute down the Edge Duo. This is the Axino microphone. And this is the Edge Duo microphone. I might not have them perfectly level matched, and that may make one sound better than the other. But here again, Edge Duo not level matched, and our Axino not level matched. Maybe the Axino's a little quieter. You let me guys know what you're hearing down there, because I hear a little bit of a delay that throws off my perceptions of level. So this microphone, normally, let's check out this price again. It was going for $400 when I first checked this out. Recently, I'm seeing it reduced down to $239. I wonder if it's being discontinued, and maybe that's why. I'm also seeing the same thing with Solo. So this Edge Duo is $1,049. The Edge Solo was $699. That was, hey, we're really going to beat you on price, Universal Audio, by having a good quality single output microphone. That one is now reduced to $485. So really close to the price of the new standard SE1 from Universal Audio. So one of the mics where I think that Antelope Audio still wins over Universal Audio is Universal Audio doesn't have anything like this. Super affordable modeling microphone that sounds really good and has an interface built into it. The only thing I've ever noticed, if you're stupid like me and you actually hold this microphone in your hand instead of putting it on a stand, if this little piece gets loose here, you may have to just tighten it, or else the ground in the microphone can shorten. You can get a little bit of a ground hum, but just tightening that makes it go away. And I didn't experience that until I had this microphone for like more than a year, and it just came to tightening this piece at the bottom. Otherwise, build quality's been good on it. The other microphones where I think potentially Antelope Audio hasn't beat are two more, and I'll show those to you in a second, but I want to switch back to Edge Duo because I'm tired of holding that microphone. All right, let's go. The other two where they haven't beat are the Go USB modeling mic. So their USB modeling mic, this is their high-end USB modeling mic. This one is about $1,300, $1,400. So it is the same price as the Sphere DLX from Universal Audio. But the advantage that it has is it's, again, its own interface. The big drawback of a mic like the Sphere LX or the Sphere DLX or the Go Duo is that there's two outputs in them to handle those two different capsule outputs so we can really do that accurate modeling. So whenever you want to use one microphone, you've got to use up two channels in your interface. For those of us who only have two channel interfaces, that could be a problem. What if you need three channels? What if you need two channels? You're using your two channels. You can no longer do a recording with acoustic guitar and a vocal and a mic for each. You can no longer do a podcast where there's two people talking into two different microphones. All that is out the window if you have a two-channel interface and you're using both the channels for one microphone. So that is the big sell for me on the Antelope Edge Go. The Edge Go, it's got two channels coming out of it, but it doesn't use up any channels on your interface because it is an interface. And once again, it has DSP built in for real-time effects without latencycy latency. Oh, and I should mention that some of the real-time effects that I didn't show you on the Axino include, there's this whole reverb section down here. Should I go to the Axino just one more quick second and show you that reverb? Let's do that. Off with the Edge Duo, on with the Axino. Here's the software for the Axino. And let's take this out of bypass. Check. Can I turn up reverb level? Hello. Let me see. Is it going through monitor path there? Let me see if I've got it set up properly. There might be something I'm doing wrong with routing. If not, check. Hello. The next place that I think that Antelope Audio has universal audio beat is in stereo mics. This is the most expensive modeling microphone out there right now. The Quadro from Antelope Audio. It's about $2,500. So yes, this is a $2,500 modeling microphone. However, it's not just one modeling microphone. It's two modeling microphones, each of which has two outputs. So it's called the Quadro because there's four outputs on this microphone. Now, the reason that this is better than the universal audio stuff is you can do some stereo recording with the DLX from Universal Audio, but this one lets you physically rotate the two separate heads, and it is two separate mics, and you're getting the full polar response modeling correctly with this microphone. You can kind of do stereo recording with a DLX because it has two different capsules and one output from each, and they can do things to mess around with the phase alignment of the capsules, so you can get stereo off of the Sphere DLX. But this just does it better. It has the hardware feature of being able to rotate the capsules and accurately monitor or accurately recreate the original polar pattern. If you wanted to do something like the bloom line technique, which is one of my favorite stereo miking techniques, you would need something like this Quadro. The bloom line technique is a technique that takes two bidirectional microphones and puts them in an XY pattern. Sounds absolutely gorgeous, so real. You can just so easily localize where things are in the sound field. Bloom line technique, if you haven't used it, go use it. If you want to do something like that, you could really only do it with this Quadro if you want in a modeling mic. Similarly, to do a true mid-side technique properly, where you have a bidirectional mic on the sides and then a cardioid mic up front, again, to do that accurately, you'd really have to do it with this Quadro, not with a Sphere. So it's got all that built in. For less than the price of two good quality modeling mics, you get the one modeling mic that has it all built in. And again, a whole bunch of great mics in here, like all of the best mics ever created for stereo miking, you've got loaded in this guy. So if your studio just wants one really flexible stereo microphone for all sorts of different purposes, this could be the microphone. So to recap, so far, top picks where I think Universal Audio has Antelope Audio beat, right now in that $1,000 to $1,500 price range for an all analog mic, they're in great shape. The Sphere LX is a no-brainer buy from Universal Audio, the one that I started on. Fantastic microphone. However, if you didn't want to use up two channels with the Sphere LX, you could instead, for just a little bit more money, go ahead and get the Edge Go from Antelope Audio. And the Edge Go, this one's $13.99. And I don't know, I've got to say, for me, I might buy this Edge Go over the Universal Audio DLX just to free up two additional channels. That's a possibility. Because you're getting an interface, two channels of additional A to D conversion, and not having to worry about eating up an extra channel on your regular interface. So that gives this Edge Go maybe a slight edge, no pun intended, over the DLX. But if we're just looking for the best condenser microphone you can get for around $1,000, I might go for the Sphere for my personal tastes. I just like the software a little bit better, and the sound quality, when they're different, veers more towards the way that I like sound, slightly thicker on the UA versus slightly brighter maybe in the Antelope. But the sound is so close, and that's almost can't be the distinguishing factor between any of these because they're all so close. All right, last brand, and this is the only brand I don't have here, is Slate. And just because it's a little easier for me, with the way my head is turning, I'm going to switch back. Oh, I was on the Sphere the whole time. Whoops. The Edge Duo. I should have been over here. You can tell I'm fried from writing a 4,000 word article. So this is the Edge Duo again. And this is the Sphere. Sorry. The last brand here is Slate. And Slate, man, these guys are the OG of condenser microphones that model other condenser microphones. They came out with their ML1 for their Slate VSM, the virtual mic system, I think in 2014, before any of these other brands were doing their thing. And it sounded great then, and it sounds great today. And for years, they were like the best option. So in 2014, their ML1 came out. And then in 2016, Townsend Labs announced their first Sphere microphone, which was substantially more. I think it's $1,500 now. I think it was even more expensive when it came out. It might have been $2,000. I can't remember. So this ML1, when it came out, I don't know if it was closer to $1,000, but it was, hey, this is an affordable, easy to reach, only uses one channel modeling microphone with great sounds in it. A lot of these things were sold and some major hit records were made on them. No question about it. They later came out with their ML2, which is their small diaphragm condenser mic. Those are only $150 each. Now, these prices are a little bit misleading. It says $600 for the ML1 from Slate, but that is with their basic level of mic models. There's about 8 mic models in there. So not nearly as many mic models are as included with Antelope Audio and Universal Audio. Both include more mic models. And you can get expansion packs from Slate. Their standard price is like $200, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do discounts regularly. But if you got like all the expansion packs, you might be spending over $1,000 on the mic, which is a single output mic in the case of Slate. So, to sum it up, I don't know how their price sits anymore next to Antelope Audio and Universal Audio, because this new single output condenser with even more models in it from Universal Audio is $400 compared to the Slate at $600. So, man, shots fired by Universal Audio saying, we're coming for your lunch, Slate. Either stop making microphones or cut your prices or make some new ones, because how are you still going to sell your mics for $600 when we've got this one that has even more mic models than you do for just $400? And the same thing coming out of Antelope Audio. Antelope Audio, let's see here. Their Solo was $700, so slightly more originally than the Slate was. However, I've seen the price on sale reduced down to $485 now, within spitting distance of the Universal Audio. So the prices on these things are coming down dramatically. Where you used to have to spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 to get into modeling microphones, now you have stuff that's as good as probably the best mics from 10 years ago would have been the Slate ML1. 10 years ago, maybe you're spending $1,000 in the money of back then. And given inflation, it's probably higher than that now. Now you can get for $400 from Universal Audio or $485 right now from Antelope, a great modeling condenser, or even cheaper from Antelope Audio. You get the Axino, $239 on sale right now, down from $400, and it's not just a modeling mic, it has an interface built in, unlike the Universal Audio. So that's, again, where Antelope Audio kind of has Universal Audio and Slate both beat a little bit. The prices on their small diaphragm condenser mics, that's similar. Their ML2 is $150 compared to the Note from Antelope, which is about 120, I think, 129, 130. And then for a pair of the condensers from Universal Audio, that's the most expensive small diaphragm condenser. In Universal Audio, let me get you the price exactly right here. Universal Audio SP1 small diaphragm condenser pair, $400 normally. Now on sale currently for $350. I found in one place it was B&H, $350. So $350 for a pair of the Universal Audios, and closer to $250 for a pair from either Slate or Antelope Audio if you want small diaphragm condensers. And that's about the lay of the land. Are there any other things that you guys want to hear? I could momentarily swap out maybe this Sphere microphone and we could hear it next to the SE1 to hear the difference between a single diaphragm and a dual diaphragm. But honestly, we just did the same exact thing with the Axino versus the Core Duo, because the Core Duo is the dual diaphragm, 2 outputs, and the Xeno was the single diaphragm, single output. So there you got to hear the differences. Not really that substantial. To me, this Core Duo sounds a little bit more open and airy and detailed and real, and this Xeno sounded a little bit thicker and more direct and maybe a little bit more closed in sounding. But those are the overall differences. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me see if I have any last minute questions or requests here in the chat. And then we'll start closing up with some final notes from me on how some of these brands compare. Before I do that, let's go on through the chat. Tanner says, wow, that was like a Sony. That was believable. Lewis says, what about the Slate MO1? Yes, we did talk about that. Oh, Young Gatto says the reverb sound great. I guess it was there, just not in my monitor path. So maybe you guys did hear reverb when I thought it wasn't getting your reverb. Justin is alive, says Andre. Yes, you can tell because I'm making mistakes. And that's how it works. Ben says, I actually like the sound of the Xeno. I do too. I did a whole review of just the Xeno. You guys should check it out. It's absolutely wonderful microphone for $400. I mean, it's remarkable. It was the cheapest modeling mic ever made when it came out. And now it's still one of the cheapest modeling mics made. It's got an interface built in, and it sounds close to as good as these other modeling mics that cost $1,000 or $1,500. So if you're on the fence and you just want to try something, like go get the Xeno. It's a lot of fun. It's got the reverb built in. It's got the DSP built in. It acts as an additional interface. Wonderful. If you want something higher end, the Edge Go from Antelope is basically an Xeno on steroids. It's a higher quality, better spec version of the Xeno that's more elegant and has, I think, is bundled with more stuff as well. And then if you want to go up from there, I do have to admit, I like the software maybe just a little bit more on Universal Audio. And I also have found in my experience that the operation from Universal Audio is a little bit more bulletproof than Antelope Audio. Don't get me wrong, Antelope Audio is not going to ruin any of your sessions. There's no situation in which you're going to have an Antelope Audio microphone or interface like crap out in the middle of a session and ruin a good take and the record's destroyed. No. What I have found very occasionally with some of the Antelope Audio stuff that I've owned is sometimes, like when you first go to turn it on, it like doesn't turn on and connect with your computer, and then you've got to like restart the interface or unplug the interface and replug it or restart your computer or something, and then everything works fine. And it's not like it blew up in the middle of the session. It's just like the session didn't get started annoyingly for like a couple of minutes and you had to like do something extra. That has never happened to me with Universal Audio once. So that's the one additional point I'll give to Universal Audio. Slightly more rock solid bulletproof operation. Slightly better hardware to software fit and integration, slightly richer feature set, slightly better GUI design. To me, Universal Audio is like Mac computers, right? It's like Apple computers, where it's this walled garden, this curated experience that you pay a little bit more, but it's just such a wonderful user experience. Whereas Antelope Audio, they're a little bit more like a high-end, tricked-out PC, where you spend a little bit less and you get a little bit more. But it's maybe ever so slightly more industrial and utilitarian. But still, you can get amazing results out of it, and you're spending less and getting more. And they're also beautifully built. I mean, the build quality on this guy, anything in the Edge series, is absolutely wonderful. Even the build quality on this guy, if you can spend $230 on a mic, is excellent. So, yeah, that's the only little quibble that I have with those guys. In terms of sound quality, what modeling mic do you prefer, asks Lewis. I kind of scale them, for me personally, I like them in order of Universal Audio, Antelope, Slate. But your order could be reversed. They all sound very, very close. And all of them sound very close to the original mics they are modeling. I think that out of the three, when they err in a direction of going too far in one direction or another, Universal Audio errs in the direction of going thicker and richer and fuller, and maybe trying to stay truer to the warts and all approach of the original vintage microphones. Whereas Slate is on the end where things, if they're going to err in a direction, it's going to err towards, let's make this thing sound a little bit brighter, a little bit clearer, a little bit more modern, and let's err in the direction of giving a little more sheen. When in doubt, and there's a question between whether to add a little bit more sheen or not, let's go sheen rather than dull, is the way that Slate would go. So they're on the two opposite ends of the spectrum. But those two opposite ends of the spectrum are very close together. And I would say in the middle between them would be Antelope Audio. where there's a balance there. So generally thicker, fuller UA, generally maybe closer to the original models, generally brighter and more modern on Slate, and maybe slightly further away from the original models. Maybe they sound like the original models, EQ'd ever so slightly to fit better into a modern mix, Slate, and then Antelope audio somewhere in between. And I think if you listen to some before and after examples, direct A/B comparisons, you'll hear much of the same thing in more controlled tests. I don't know if my levels are matched identically, and I don't know if my distance from the mics are matched identically. So we're not doing a pure perfect shootout. Rather, what I'm giving you is a contextualization of how all of these models fit one to another next to each other. I would actually have to spend longer than this hour video to give you a proper A/B shootout that you could hear the differences on. That video would probably, even if it was a 15-minute video, man, that would probably take to edit and shoot like 8 hours to make a 15-minute video like that. So instead, you get this. Plus, I hope this has given you the big bird's eye view. And from there, you can check out some more dedicated before and afters yourself. If in the members only section, you guys want to get in a Q&A with me and ask for like even more detailed back and forths, we can do that. But great to have you guys here. This was a lot of fun going through this. And last couple of shout outs I got to give are to you guys. If you want to buy any of these microphones, check out our affiliate links. In fact, even if you don't want to buy any of these mics, but you want to buy something eventually, like later this week, click one of our affiliate links anyway, and we'll still get a commission on whatever you buy from that store. So it helps support the channel. Also consider becoming a member of the channel. Give us $5 a month and you will get access to our members only mixed feedback sessions, our members only live Q&A sections, exclusive videos, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Also, in addition, you can book me for mastering. You can book me for mixed coaching calls. I love to do those. I love to help people stuff transform in the mixed coaching calls. But the best thing I can get you guys is our full-length courses like mixing breakthroughs, compression breakthroughs, EQ breakthroughs, mastering demystified. They all will change the way that you work forever for the better, guaranteed, or your money back. My apologies if I'm a little bit less organized and more disjointed and not as, articulate as I usually am, because I just fried my brain doing this post this morning, and I had this mission to do the post on the live stream in the same day, and doing that giant 4,000 word post totally destroyed my brain. So hopefully this was still watchable, even though I'm not feeling top 100% level today. So thanks for being here with me. Also, a big shout out and thanks to Sound Toys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. Try out anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. Make absolutely wonderful stuff. Similarly, Baby Audio, check them out, babyaud.io/SonicScoop. That's babyaud.io/SonicScoop. Check out their excellent plugins with their great free trial as well. And you can get 15% off with the code SonicScoop at checkout. Go over to babyaud.io/SonicScoop or just enter SonicScoop at checkout for 15% off. I think that's all the stuff that I'm supposed to say. The last thing that I want to say is thank you guys for hanging out with me. This has been Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. See you next time.